Welcome back to the pizzeria on the back of two monumental results for Scotland's national team. Scotland 1, Croatia 0 and Poland 1, Scotland 2. Captain Andy leaping forward with a towering header to send the travelling Scots into pandemonium. Another huge result under Steve Clarke, and one that keeps us in a fighting chance of staying in the big time when it comes to the Nations League. Another huge result, in my opinion, showing the man in charge has it in him to organise his side, effectively get the players running marathons, bodies on the line, and competing with some of the better teams in Europe. Here to inevitably disagree with me this evening, we've got Alex and Paul. Firstly, Alex, how you doing? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad. Well, pretty confident actually after last night. Obviously, the results elsewhere didn't go our way, as we'll get into. But I think you can't complain. Can't complain. We've won 2 games.
And Paul?
I'm feeling good, Anis. Introduction of Ben Doak's got me hopeful that Lennon Miller and David Watson's going to follow soon. We're just going to take over the world after that. So.
Well, let's give the initial reaction. We obviously started off with Croatia. I thought it was a bit of a turgid performance to start with. Obviously helped with the red card in the first half. Croatia looked like they were spreading the ball about well. Guardiola looked especially good in the ball in the first half. But ultimately, they lost the plot, and they were punished for it, and we capitalised. I thought Ben Doak, you mentioned him, Paul, absolutely terrorised Guardiola in that second half, especially. Alex, firstly, what was your initial reaction to that game?
It was a bit of an odd atmosphere round Hampden. For really till the red card, it felt quite subdued, a bit kind of, oh yeah, this is, I suppose we're here again for another Scotland game where we're probably going to lose. Was kind of the kind of atmosphere. It felt a bit of a chore that people were there rather than something we were all looking forward to. I think the game kind of sparked into life after the red card. I think as soon as that happened, it was like, right, okay, no, actually, this is a game we can win. I thought Doak was excellent. I think if we're probably going to be this 90% of this pod is just going to be us raving about Ben Doak and how great he will be and is. I must admit, I was surprised at how poor Croatia dealt with a runner at them. For someone like Vardiol, who's what, €90 million, couldn't cope with Doak at him at all. It's almost, I think, something quite emblematic of the sort of way football's been played now, in that you don't get wingers that run at players. They just the defenders are used to a cut back or just passing around the 18-yard box where a cross comes in, and it's a fresh breath of air. It's like a sort of winger from yesteryear with Doak. And honestly, I think the goal was coming, but you did feel the longer the game was going, just thinking, I've been here before. We've been on top in the game. We should win. Somehow Croatia are going to go up the park and score, but fortunately that didn't happen, and McGinn took his goal well.
Was it a fresher breath air or a breath of fresh air?
Did I say a fresher breath air?
Hi.
Breath of fresh air. Breath of, to be fair,
I'll take you up on the point on the. I'll take you up to the point of the atmosphere. I wasn't at the game, but I was watching the telly, and it did seem a bit drab. It kind of reminded me of the game against Norway at the end of the last qualification, when we'd already qualified and it was meant to be this big celebration of us going to Germany, and it certainly was so before the game, impressive display and all that. And then as soon as the whistle went, it was kind of just silent. The atmosphere was a bit grim. That's certainly the vibe I got, but obviously the red card and everything that happens picked up the atmosphere. It was certainly a different story in the second half. Paul, were you at the game?
No, I wasn't. Just watched it in the telly.
What did you think?
Well, first off, hats off to the SFA for putting it on YouTube for everybody to watch for a change. Because obviously we see all the England games when they come on. It's about time we saw some Scotland games, so well done to them for that. The game itself, I thought, we went at Croatia like mostly for the start, so we were going at it. And as Alex said, Vardiol, I was really surprised. I mean, he plays every week with Man City, so I was really surprised how Doak just took him to the cleaners every time he went past him. A couple of step overs and he was past him. But I was pleasantly surprised, obviously. So I mean, I think the tactics haven't changed any really. It's still 4-2-3-1 he's playing, but the difference is it's Christie, who's more like a kind of central midfielder, and he always comes in. It has been changed for Doak, and Doak's just got that. He just wants to take people on. He's got that youthful energy. He just wants to keep going at people and get to the line. And as Alex says, we haven't seen a player like that, for God knows how long in a Scotland jersey. So we just need another one on the left-hand side, and we'll be laughing there.
Well, Guardiola, to be fair to him, listen, great on the ball, but arguably doesn't do a lot of defending when he's in a Man City jersey. It's very possession-based. He gets a lot of the ball. But, when he come against a decent winger like Ben Doak, he got exposed a little bit. Alex is a bit of a dying breed, wingers like Ben Doak. Not even just in Scotland, but globally, this sort of excessive possession game that you see so often now, players like Ben Doak are pretty scarce. Are we pretty lucky in Scotland to have a guy like him?
It does feel like a sort of a throwback, doesn't it, to a sort of player that you would have seen early 2000s or even earlier than that. It's good to see someone who's quite young in his career, and in fact, and very surprising, someone who's been at Celtic and Liverpool, who still has that sort of attribute. It's not been coached out of him, which you kind of see a lot of players that are 16, 17, first break into sort of into their club first teams, and then it's clearly coached out of them that they'll cut back, do whatever they need to do. But I think with Doak, I just hope that he continues doing it. I'm just because it's something that it's another thing that it's another sort of string to the bow of our attack, that especially Scotland's attack, which has been quite muted in recent games. I think we saw at the Euros we needed that something that we just didn't have. It was kind of just look at the Hungary game, which, to be fair, I was half cut for most of it, and I was glad I was, because it was turgid us trying to attack in a game we needed to win. Whereas both games, Doak was especially last night, Doak was able to just get in behind or take a player on, which is exactly what, as a fan, you want to see, even if it's probably from a coaching point of view, not necessarily the best thing. But it worked. It got us up the park, it got corners, got free kicks, and eventually got us the goal.
Well, we've got an early substitution here, and Nicola's entered the fray. We'll get the excuses later, Nicola, but we're getting the reaction first and foremost. How did you find the last couple of games?
Yeah, do you know what? I've been impressed. I feel like I actually seen somebody say something about, obviously, Steve Clarke silencing his critics, and I don't actually. I actually want to look at it more like he's. Well, obviously he's not listened to everybody on social media, but he's changed it. I would like to say he's definitely changed it from the previous games, and definitely the Euros. He's obviously playing with wingers and not always picking his good old favourites these days. So I have been impressed with the slight change in attitude.
Who would you say you're most impressed with player-wise, Nicola, over the last couple of games?
So,
Oh, no?
I think everybody's going to say Ben Doak. I think he's brought a real difference to the team. He's brought pace. He's direct, and oh,
You with us?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello.
Late performance, buffering Wi-Fi. Come on,
Can you hear
ref.
me?
This is Viaplay running.
Oh, I don't know what happened there.
running
Yeah, Ben Doak, I think, impressed everybody. I think he's brought pace, directness.
He went silent again. Right, well,
Do you know what?
take
I'm
the
connected
link
to my phone because I'm at my friend's house, and his friend's changed his Wi-Fi password to we don't know what.
Right, we'll get the mic off Nicola for a second. Yeah. Paul, who were you most impressed with over the few days? Aside from Ben, obviously Ben Doak was a superstar. The 19-year-old's come in, he's blown everyone away. Who were you most impressed with?
Well, obviously Doak first of all, but I think McGinn responded quite well to being dropped to the bench. At Hampden the other night, he's came on and wanted to prove a point. So I think you've got to take your hat off to him for that. I mean, he was probably needing dropped, to be fair. I would say the way his performances were going for Scotland, but He's responded really well to it. And obviously John Souttar as well. He's had his fair share of critics in the past playing for Scotland, but he's really kind of focused on what colossal performances for Scotland and a big part of that defence for us.
Right, John Souttar last night was phenomenal. Can I just say, I was pure fanboy of him in the pub last night. Like he was so good. Every challenge he made, blocking it off the line, some of the passing range from him was absolutely fantastic, wasn't it?
Aye, see the through ball for the goal as well. You
Aye.
think that was a Brazilian or something? You know what I mean?
I mean, other notable players. Listen, Alex, we have to mention Craig Gordon, 41 years old. The 6'5" goalie he just keeps on going. Some of the saves he's been making, especially against Croatia, were just outstanding as well.
It's sensational to see him back in a Scotland shirt. I think there was the big thing that would be his send off at the game before the Euros, which was right. That's perfect time. He's hanging up his gloves. Angus Gunn will be the number one for the foreseeable future, and he's came into the squad and he's delivered two sensational performances in these games. And I'm absolutely delighted for him. I mean, I was at Tannadice. It was actually right at where I sit at Tannadice was the when he broke his leg. And I'll be honest, I'm amazed he'd be even back playing football at any level after that. So to come back from that, which was only 2 years ago, to come back from that, what was probably one of the worst possible injuries you could have, and come back to probably play the best football of his life. He play. As I say, play the best football. I don't know if you can quite say that for a goalkeeper. Make the best saves of his life for Scotland. It's fantastic, and he's. I suppose he's playing for a Hearts team that are, let's just say, suffering many shots, conceding many shots at the minute, given that where they are on the table. But it's just so refreshing, and it's. I think we've had this crisis of goalkeeping that's kind of been looming over since Marshall kind of stepped away. And even though he's 41, it's great to see him going great guns. And who knows, he could be playing for Scotland for another couple of years. Yeah, so long may it
Yeah, I mean,
continue.
there was a lot of talk of why wasn't he involved in the last Euros? I think Hearts do need to take some responsibility there. I think he has been on and off in that Hearts team. Xander Clarke is, especially going into the last Euros. Xander Clarke, I'm pretty sure was the number one goal. He's only really started to re-emerge as Hearts' number one in recent months, and to be fair, his game time for Scotland has reflected that. I think David Marshall, I think with the first Euros that Steve Clarke got into, I think David Marshall probably deserved to start. That'll come as quite controversial to a lot of people, but he did earn it. He did save the penalty to get us there. I think it was right and proper that he was given that chance, but he wasn't. Oh, don't know if that's.
You can still hear you. Don't worry.
Oh, you can still hear me. Yeah, I don't know if that's. That might be controversial to some, but I think he deserved that. But there has been a bit of a problem. Angus Gunn's not really stepped up in a lot of games. He had one game against Spain, but you can see the quality compared to when we have Gordon and goals there, Paul.
Aye, definitely. I mean, what age is he? 41 or something?
41 years old, yeah.
So if you look at that, I mean, some of the saves he made, especially last night, it's kind of defying his age with some of these saves. So, fair play to him. Long may it continue.
Yeah. Notable mentions as well. I think there's a lot of unsung heroes in the Scotland team now. I think, to be fair to Steve Clarke, to give him his credit, he's getting the most out of players that aren't the superstars of the team. Grant Hanley isn't as popular with the supporters of John McGinn. Tony Ralston, who is very much filling a gap for Aaron Hicken and Nathan Patterson. I thought he's been solid the last couple of games. He gets a lot of stick, Anthony Ralston, but I thought he was pretty solid. Didn't put too many foot wrong. And Kenny McLean as well. He was brilliant in the middle of the park last night. I thought he struggled a wee bit against Croatia, but against Portugal, for example, in the campaign that game at Hampden, I thought he was absolutely outstanding. So, Alex, he is getting the most out of these players, and that can't be said for all Scotland managers that we've seen in our lifetime.
Yeah, I think he certainly came to the Nations League, Steve Clarke, with a lot of doubters. and there was the big acts like we need results, and then we got a couple of performances without results. And it's kind of felt since the Portugal game was a bit of a turning point. Portugal home game was a turning point. That 0-0 draw was, whilst it was a 0-0 draw, did feel like it gave him and it gave the squad so much confidence to go into these two games, which were always going to be potentially winnable. I think winning them both was always seen as quite optimistic, but you know, it's part of that has come from Clarke, whilst publicly still being quite stubborn and defiant. You can tell that he has seen what has gone wrong. What went wrong in Germany. He's brought in guys like Gold. He's brought in guys like Doak, who there's been the clamour to play for Scotland for ages. He's dropped Dykes for Tommy Conway. Didn't quite work. I think we'll probably admit that Conway, whilst he certainly put himself about on Friday night, it didn't quite really come off. And I think as soon as Dykes came on, Scotland looked a bit more dangerous up top. I think that's still a problem area. That number 9 spot, but hopefully one of our 5 or 6 players that have occupied that spot in the last 18 months can actually hit a good reign of form. Otherwise, I don't know, Jordan White or someone, let's just try him for a laugh. But I think he's proved a lot of doubters wrong, which I don't think many people were expecting. I think most people were expecting, especially after the first 2 games, where we probably deserved something to. Probably expected us to completely drop out this group, get relegated, finish 4th, and we're being pot free for World Cup qualifying, which would have been the sort of disaster scenario. We've managed to get 3rd in the group, so we've got a relegation playoff in March, which it's not perfect, but it's not bad. And as it stands at the time of recording, we are still in pot 2 as long as Slovakia don't score in the next 60 minutes. But that can be seen as a success, and it's also, I think, it's shown that we can play against the top teams in Europe, which I think is the big concern. Was like, can we actually play against? Can we compete against the likes of Portugal? Can we compete against the likes of Croatia? Because we were found out in Germany specifically by Germany, and in the end by Hungary as well. And it turns out we can compete at this level, and we're still a threat. And this is Clarke ball 3.0. I think is the term we're giving it now, or is it 2.0? I'm not quite sure. 3.0. Let's just go with that.
I think that, to be fair, I think that's why he's still on a job. He's shown that he can organise the side well. He's shown that the players do respond to him, and that we are competing at a decent level. I think there was a lot of mismanagement going into Germany. We were on a really good run of form, and then we gave ourselves some ridiculous friendlies, like against England and France, and there was someone else as well. It gave us this strange run of form going into the competition where we were completely lacking in confidence. I think we got a bit of a fright against Germany. I think that's fair to say. And that was always on the cards, if you like. We were always capable of getting really turned over of a team like Germany. It's not really happened yet under Steve Clarke, besides the relative doing off England and France. But before that period of time, it hadn't really happened to us. And it was our first tournament in front of fans as well. I mean, properly in front of fans. So there was that sort of fear factor as well, I think, when we pitched up. And I think the occasion got to them, but I think the response that you've seen in the next game was really positive. And I think it shows that we can do it at that level. And perhaps we just needed that one more experience to get us properly ready for the next tournament. And I think if you look at the performances since then, we've shown that we are competing. I don't remember a Scotland team that goes home and away to a team like Portugal and really is hard to beat and frustrating the game. And they only scored a couple, and one of them which was a sucker punch from Ronaldo at the end. The last campaign we went home and away and took Spain to task. Paul, it just shows you why he's in the job there, because we know what we're getting with Clarke, and it is a decent standard.
I mean, after qualifying for the Euros, I don't know, maybe the focus went away. When you do well, sometimes that happens with teams. But I mean, if you look at last night, when Doak, I think they put 2 on him just at half time. So he wasn't really performing in the second half as well. So what he's done is, I think he's put Armstrong on the left hand on that side, and then he's put Gold on the left-hand side. So I don't know if it's like a balance thing, because Gold is quite a similar player to Doak, I suppose, in a way. So I don't know if he's maybe want to attack up one side and have a balance on the other. And then obviously if when they put two on Doak like that, he's maybe tried to balance it up. I don't know, but it just shows that he is looking at what's happening in the game and looking at the tactics, etc., and acting on it. So I mean, I think the way he's got the team playing just now, there's no other man for the job again. So
Well, there is some decisions that could be called into question. Like a lot of people were a bit confused as to why we took Doak off last night, Alex. What did you think of that decision? If you felt like Doak still had a moment in him, he still felt like he had another 10, 20 minutes, albeit he was tiring. I thought Christie was a bit of a strange substitution, given what he was given to the game.
I understand why he's made the decision. I think it's Doak is a young player and he plays a lot of football, being at Middlesbrough. I think you look at their campaign, and he doesn't want. I think there's probably been some informal agreement between Scotland and Middlesbrough that he wouldn't, or Scotland and Liverpool and Middlesbrough, that he wouldn't play every minute. He was starting to look tired, and I think you can see how big the pitch was in Poland, or maybe that was just the camera angle being like zoomed out and looked like it was from outer space, but it looked like it was taking a toll on the players with it basically being a basketball match for 60 minutes and and just all out attack from both teams. And you don't want a player like Doak to. His game is based on running and pace and beating players. So maybe they thought, right, maybe try and get a bit more creativity on in terms of set pieces, winning free kicks, from getting someone like Christie on, and as well, it's bringing an experienced head on in a crunch game, and it's not, so maybe Clarke doesn't want to put the pressure on too much pressure on Doak too early, too soon. So I don't have too much of an issue with it. I can see the frustration, but I can see why he's made the decision. I think again though it's these are it's similar to the Norway away game 2 years ago now. Last year, no, it was last year. A lot longer ago. Yeah, shows the cycle of a Scotland fan. But people are going, why is Kenny McLean coming on? Why on earth's he coming on? And then, lo and behold, it all works out. So I think sometimes Clarke's tactics work in mysterious ways, but they do seem to reap rewards. So, I think he made the right decision. And again, obviously I say this as a Ryan Gold fanboy, but delighted he got another 2 caps. And I think, again, showed a positive impact. He's a player who has been in incredible form for Vancouver Whitecaps. Narrowly just missed out on getting into the last stages of the MLS playoffs. He scored 5 goals in 3 games, and if he did try a shot. It was a carbon copy of the kind of scoop that he scored for Vancouver against Portland, but it didn't quite come off. I think it ended up in row Z of the bottom tier of the National Stadium in Warsaw. But he's someone who, as soon as he came on, you could see that there's an extra level of creativity, and it's an extra issue that the Polish defence couldn't deal with. And I think that's something that we've always traditionally struggled with is creating issues for defences, especially in games where we need a win or we need a goal. And that's something that we managed, especially last night. So, again with Doak, hopefully this is just because it's the start of his Scotland career. Hopefully by 2026 in the World Cup he's playing full 90 minutes. I hope so. But it's certainly not a blight on Steve Clarke. I think, given that the end result was Scotland winning and it was a late goal. So
I bet you're gutted Souttar and Gold went for United, Alex, huh?
It was a good laugh. I did think where because there's a photo of Robertson, Souttar, Gold, and Joe McGovern, who I have no idea where he is now. I think probably at Forfar or something. They all played together at Riverside pitches in Dundee when they were all like 17, 18. You've probably seen the photo online somewhere. And I was thinking, yeah, it's pretty weird that 3 of those players are on the park for Scotland.
So, Paul, 3 defeats, 2 wins, and a draw. I think it was a successful campaign. We did end up on 7 points, just 1 point behind Croatia. Ultimately third, which potentially keeps us in the division if we win the playoff. Do you think it's a successful campaign, or are you looking back with a bit of regret?
I think if you look at it, I mean, the Portugal game, if Ronaldo doesn't score that, did we finish second? I think maybe possibly.
Uh,
Not sure.
we'd certainly be on equal points with Croatia. You can
So,
nitpick it, whatever
I mean,
else, but
you could look at the whole campaign if that was a changing thing for the whole campaign. So if you look at it that way, it has been this pretty successful campaign. To be fair,
yeah. Is there any conversation to be had about whether Steve Clarke keeps his job? I know we always go back to this sort of binary conversation of are you Clark in, are you Clark out, but it's just more of a it's just more of a question to say are you favourable of the manager or not? Do you think there's any question about Steve Clarke just now, Paul?
no, I think as I said there earlier, he's a man for the job just now. Well, based on the last two performances, but going back to Doak, I mean, I don't know if you saw it in the game though. I think they doubled up on him. Like, about 10 minutes into the second half, I think they doubled up on him. I seen it. He was attacking a couple of times. There was two of them round him. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with that in the future. But I think obviously Clark's maybe seen that and he's put like Armstrong and Christie in, as you say, more experienced players to maybe kind of nullify
Did
any.
anyone else get a wee bit of anxiety at the end when Stuart Armstrong wouldn't clear the ball?
I was I was very worried. I was like,
Yeah,
I was in two minds because it's a bit like I kind of need a second goal here, but I was also hoping it's like this is the 95th minute of 4 minutes added time. Like let's just clear the fucking clear
Yeah,
the ball,
yeah.
please clear the ball.
I mean, listen, he'd hate us mentioning it, but there was a wee bit of deja vu kicking in there, and it wasn't for the better as well. I won't mention that game, but it certainly was cause for anxiety anyway.
Yeah, it was not fun. But I mean, coming back to the original point, I think this has been a pretty good campaign for us. I mean, this was we were bottom seeds when the groups were drawn. The expectation from seeding was that we finished bottom. We finished in third, 1 point off of Croatia. We did not look. We looked competitive in every single game. Arguably, the game we played the worst in was the game we won it against Croatia at home. I think we've learned more. We've brought in new players to the squad, which is always a good thing. We clearly have a platform to build on for the World Cup qualifiers next year. I think in terms of the end goal, the Nations League as a tournament, whether or not you stock in it or not, I still think it's a great tournament, and I think it's something. It's a tournament. It's one of the few tournaments Scotland can actually win just by its nature of being quite of being short and sharp. If we would have been in the quarter final had we had results gone our way last night. But the main goal is playing at USA, Mexico, Canada in 2 years' time, and I think we've shown that we are within the top 16 teams in Europe and deserve to be there. So that's got to be the end goal for Clarke and for the squad. And I think we've seen enough positives to show that right, we've learned mistakes of June. We're going to be able to rectify that, continue to rectify that next year. And with a lot of injuries as well, guys like Ferguson, guys like Shea Adams, and Angus Gunn, we're still managing to be competitive with teams filled with superstars like Modric, like Ronaldo, like Vardiol, and that can only be seen as a good thing. So as for Clarke and Clarke out, I think that argument's kind of abated. The SFA weren't going to sack him anyway because they don't tend to sack managers unless it's tragic. I mean, Alex McLeish got ages after he lost 3-0 to Kazakhstan, which was a sacking offence in itself. So, I mean, they're clearly weren't going to sack him. But I think it's now shown that we are in a place where we can go right. We've got 6 or 8 games to get us to the World Cup. We're probably going to have an okay-ish group to get there. Right, we can certainly do that. So hopefully
Yeah, we certainly looked more like a team, and that's given cause to get behind Clarke and the boys now. It's sort of been these conversations of whether or not he stays or goes. Just get behind the boys, and hopefully we'll get to that World Cup, as you say, Alex. Paul, I'm going to put a gun to your head and ask you: are Scotland going to make the next World Cup? Hypothetically, of course. What answer are you giving me? Yes or no?
I'll give you a yes because the recent introduction of Doak into the team has given us some hope that we have got some players. I mean, we went that long just stagnating, I think. And then you see the way he's performed the last couple of games. You get players like Lennon Miller and that coming through. You know, it's given us hope. And obviously, I think the energy's kind of brushed off in other players as well, because you can see that they're more kind of attack minded and there's a lot more energy about the team. So when you look at those things, I think we've got good players coming through, and we could get back up to where we were in the likes of the kind of late 70s, early 80s kind of thing. So
I'll take that gun and put it on your head, Alex. What's your answer?
I agree, actually. I think, obviously, qualifying for Euros is much easier than qualifying for the World Cup. You've got 24 teams at the Euros. You've only got 16, was 13, now 16 European teams at the World Cup. And I think players like Doak, players like Hickey, Ferguson, McTominay, now that he's thriving at Napoli, they take us from being a sort of Republic of Ireland, Albania type country that, get to the Euros and be quite well organised, but not have sort of be lacking in actual quality, to taking us into that sort of top echelon of teams in Europe, into that sort of, teams that are sort of the Switzerland, the perennial qualifiers, countries like Switzerland, countries potentially like Czech Republic, although Czech Republic have kind of had a bit of a poorer, like I say, Denmark's probably a better example. Teams that are probably countries that are no bigger than ourselves, but are not much bigger than ourselves, and are always at tournaments. They're a fixture, and I think that's the kind of key thing. That's where Scotland really should be. I mean, we're the most football mad country in the planet. So I mean, the idea that we've been waiting since 1998 for a World Cup is absolutely bizarre. I'll be 27, and by the time that the next World Cup is, I won't have seen a World Cup with Scotland in it. So, hopefully if we stay the course and we don't have a huge injury crisis again, then yeah, we'll be in USA in 2026, and I'm sure we'll get pumped 7-0 off Mexico or Brazil in the opening game again, just for a good bit of fun, and we'll have the same conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give a strange answer in that, because I think a lot of people would think if you don't think he's going to get us to the USA, then he shouldn't manage us during the qualifiers. For some reason, I can't see us there. I don't know what it is, but I just think that might just be a step too far. I don't know why, but it'll probably depend on the group we get. But it just feels hard to imagine us going to a World Cup. Maybe it's because, like yourself, Alex, I mean, I'll be 30 when we go to that World Cup and I won't have seen a World Cup. Maybe it's just that sort of fear factor that Scots have, that sort of self-doubt that because it's been so long, I just can't see it happening. I feel like the Euros, the first time round, we were given a bit of a free pass in the way we got there and getting through the Nations League Group C. Obviously, last time was momentous, but it still feels like another feat that we need to reach, and I just don't know if I just can't see it. I don't know why. Obviously I hope I'm wrong, and I think probably Steve Clarke. I've been one of the few people that have said through these round of fixtures that I think Steve Clarke should stay and we should just get behind him. And I think he's probably the best man for the job. I don't really see anyone else that could come in, implement a different style of football, and us play drastically better. I think the way he sets up to frustrate teams and strangle the game and do the sort of dark arts of the game, I think that suits Scotland, and I think that'll suit us at Hampden when we play bigger teams as we've seen, and I think he gives us our best chance. But I don't know why, but I just can't.
Can I convince you? Can I have a shot at convincing you that we're going to be in?
Oh, you can have a shot, but I've no problem saying.
Right. The qualifying format's changed. There's more teams from Europe than ever before. So 13 to 16. So we finished in the top 16 in the last two qualifying campaigns for the 2022 World Cup. I think we actually finished 14th, and then obviously lost the playoff to Ukraine. But we do the same this time. We will make the World Cup. finished finished like 12th in the Euros qualifying campaign in terms of if you take the sort of ranking of all the countries. So and we finished in
Come
the
on,
top.
forget the
And we
rankings.
finished in the top. And we finished in 12 in the Nations League.
No, I'm sorry, but you lost me at the rankings. The rankings are
So
all the
in
shite.
Doesn't matter with the rankings. Look at San Marino.
Exactly.
consistently finishing in the top 16 countries, right? And the new format.
Right, level with me, Alex. So new format. Does that mean, right? Let's say we get placed in a group of how many is it? 6 teams?
So it's
8
not
teams?
6. So it's going to be 4 or 5, probably 4. So it's probably only going to be we're probably only going to play 4 teams, 3 other teams. So it's going to all be it's going to be basically if it's a 4-team group, it'll all be in September, October, November next year,
Right.
which I think suits Scotland in a kind of Champions League style format. I think Steve Clarke prefers that. I think it's a bit more. I think historically we've always struggled when these qualifying campaigns have been dragged out over 2 or 3 years. We're a team that does tend to do well in short bursts of form,
Yeah,
as
I'd
we
agree
saw
with
in the
that.
first 5 games. The last campaign, that suits. I think that would suit us. Even if not, it's still going to only be a maximum of 8 games. And if that was the case, 2 of them would be against a real minnow. So that would be
Oh,
fine.
you jinxed it, no me. But so sorry. So it's 4 teams you're saying, and you need to finish top of that group. Is that correct?
Top of the group qualifies you for the World Cup. Second gets you in a playoff. So it's going to be a playoff semi-final, so similar to what we had last time. So,
Oh, that's all
um,
right, actually.
it's
Okay.
see, I'm starting to convince you. I'm talking you around here. It's easier to qualify than it was. Where it was, I think the 2018 World Cup was very hard, where you had to win your group to qualify or be one of the best second place teams to even get in a playoff. So those days are gone, which is a good thing for Scotland. We're in a better position. I think it's the way as a team that's always on that kind of bouncing around that between sort of 12th and 20th in Europe and always kind of has been. It gives us more hope to win a group. If we're pot 2 or pot 3, probably won't matter too much because it's probably going to be similar level teams anyway in pot 2 and pot 3. The pot 1 teams, we could get a group where we've got a pot 1 team like Switzerland or Austria as the pot 1 seed, and you're thinking, right, okay, Austria's a team we've beat quite convincingly recently.
Mm.
So if it's a group like that, then you're thinking, right, okay, we might not even need a playoff. We could win the group and we're straight in the World Cup. We don't have to worry about any playoffs or anything. So
I don't
I'm,
know.
I, I'm convincing you a little bit. I feel like I'm getting a bit of movement here.
Yeah, you are getting a bit of movement. I think. Yeah, I guess we have been good in playoffs. I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why. What's holding me back? But it just
It,
feels.
it's a mental block of us playing a tournament on a different continent, which does feel a bit.
Yes.
It's a bit
Yeah.
sort of feels like, oh yeah, that's Argentina '78. That's something that we never do. I think the last tournament we played on another continent would have been Mexico '86,
Mm.
which is an omen because this World Cup's in Mexico. So do I need to say any more?
Well, we'll leave on that note because I think we'll leave it on the note that it's great that we're having these conversations. If we can give Steve Clarke one credit, it's made us dream again. And a lot of people point to the squad he's had. Granted, he has had a considerably better squad than his predecessors, but he's got the nation believing again that we can go to these tournaments and we can compete, and he's got fans back in the stadium. So we'll leave on that exciting note. Thank you very much, gents, for your time today. Paul, closing thoughts.
I think we'll qualify for the World Cup through the playoffs. I think as winning one of the groups will be quite probably like a tall order. But I just think let's see these players coming through as we spoke about. I mean, likes of the '86 World Cup with your likes of Hansen, Souness's, Dalglish's, all playing in the top league in England. And I think some of these players coming through, they could easily play in the Premiership. So that just fills us full of hope for the future, and hopefully we can kick on.
Alex?
I'm hopeful. I'm more confident than I felt like I would have been at the start of this international break. I feel like I've got this renewed sense of hope, which is all you can probably have really wanted from these games. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the playoff, the relegation playoff in March, and the qualifying campaign kicking off in earnest. Whether that's June or September, we're still yet to find out. But yeah, and obviously I can't wait to watch it again on the Viaplay YouTube channel that keeps on breaking down.
Cheers, folks.
Cheers.